Hey guys, my name's Tomato Anus, and this is a Fallout Anthology main series any % speedrun. The goal of this run is to speedrun Fallout 1, 2, 3, New Vegas, and 4 all back to back in that order. This is an any % run, so that means that glitches are allowed while console commands are not. If you would prefer a glitchless run of this, another runner named It's Jabo has done one, and there's a link to it in the description below. If you would like to watch this run with just the game audio or the original commentary from my stream, there are links to that in the description as well. The Fallout 1 speedrun begins in the cave outside of our home, Vault 13. The protagonist of this game, the character we named Kobeatron, is tasked by the Vault Overseer to find a new water chip within 150 days. We exit the cave quickly by pretty much just running straight to the exit. A couple rats engage us along the way, but we can easily disengage combat by walking behind them. In order to complete Fallout 1, we don't actually have to find the water chip, we just have to do two things. One is to destroy Mariposa military base, and the other is to destroy the cathedral where the master is located. Geographically, it makes more sense to head to Mariposa first before we head down to the cathedral. If you see me zigzagging at all or taking some weird pathways in the overworld, that's because you actually move faster on certain terrain like deserts as opposed to mountains, so I'm trying to avoid walking on mountains as much as possible. Occasionally on the world map we'll get into encounters. You'll notice that whenever I'm moving around near enemies, they tend to be frozen in place while I get to move freely. This is a glitch in Fallout 1 known as the combat glitch. The hotkey in Fallout 1 to manually enter and exit combat is A. There was an oversight in development though where the window where you're able to press A before your enemies can react is pretty large. This means that when you enter combat you'll get to move first, and then when your turn ends you can just mash A to enter combat again, effectively creating an infinite loop where it's always your turn, just like when you'd play board games with your neighbor growing up and they never let you take your turn. Inside the military base, we make a beeline towards the base's mainframe where we use science to bypass the firewall and access the self-destruction initiation subsystem. After rigging the base to explode, we make our mad dash towards the exit. Along the way, we encounter a Nightkin who's patrolling the area. In Fallout 1, some of these Nightkin will engage dialogue with you before they attack. When we do this, the Nightkin actually don't aggro to us and we can continue on as we were. You may notice that as I run around throughout the military base and also throughout the rest of Fallout 1 and also 2, that my character runs at a speed faster than normal for these games. That's because I'm doing an exploit called speed clicking. If you're moving in either the northwest, southwest, or southeast direction and then mash the move button, the character's running animation will bug out and cause for you to move faster. There is a rhythm to the mashing, and each direction requires you to mash at a different speed. In addition to this, we play both Fallout 1 and 2 as female because her movement animation has a shorter cycle, making her move faster than the male. After we blow up Mariposa, we begin our trek down south towards the cathedral. I'd like to take this moment to briefly explain this category. As I said earlier, we run Fallout 1, 2, 3, New Vegas, and 4 all back to back in order. We don't run any of the other games like Tactics or Brotherhood of Steel or 76, because as I said earlier, this category is for the main series. What you define as the main series is very arbitrary and varies person to person, but the Fallout speedrunning community deemed it to be 1, 2, 3, New Vegas, and 4 since those are the main numbered entries into the franchise with stories, and New Vegas is well accepted as a main Fallout game. In addition to that, 76 is nigh unrunnable, and Tactics and Brotherhood of Steel aren't much better themselves. At the end of the day, speedrunning is about having fun, and no one wants to actually run a category with all of those speedruns included. Once we arrive at the cathedral, we immediately level up our speech, science, and lockpick. After we level up, we want to make our way upstairs to speak with Morpheus, who we're going to convince to take us to the Master. As we access these stairs, we need to be performing the combat glitch on each level because there are guards who will attack us otherwise. After we talk to Lawrence Fishburne, we'll be brought to the secret underground vault and be in the presence of the Master. Unfortunately though, we can use the combat glitch to avoid his dialogue, resulting in a confrontation about as anticlimactic as the long night. As we make our way through this level of the vault, we encounter another Nightkin whose dialogue we skip with a combination of pressing 0 and quick saving and quick loading. Right now, our goal is to blow up the cathedral and vault, so we need to make our way to the nuke. Part of getting there is awkwardly running through this room full of mutants while trying to avoid eye contact with them. After we lockpick a couple doors, we're able to take an elevator up to the 4th floor, which is where the nuke is located. After riding the elevator, we're going to lockpick another door, after which we enter combat to safely approach the nuke, as oxymoronic as that sounds. Fortunately for us, our character watches Rick and Morty and is smart enough to use science to arm the nuke. Upon arming the nuke, we use the combat glitch to prevent the nearby guards from attacking us. We then ride the elevator back down to the 3rd floor and combat glitch our way to the elevator across the hall. You may have noticed I move slowly whenever I'm using the combat glitch. That's because you can't actually speed click during it. Your character is locked into moving wherever you click to go first, and you're not able to spam move to bug out the animation. Because of this, we try to avoid using the combat glitch as much as possible, but sometimes it's unavoidable. After we rode the elevator, we were confronted by Morpheus, who then proceeded to kick us out of the cathedral. We're fine with that though, because that place is now a pile of rubble. After a few ending cards, we briefly talk with the Vault Overseer, at the end of which the Fallout 1 portion of the run ends. The end cinematic and credits begin, signifying the end of the main story of the game, which is the goal of the speedrun. I don't want any of that "you can't truly beat Fallout, it's an open-ended game" bullshit in the comments. You may wonder what I'm doing right now, starting a brand new game of Fallout 1. Unfortunately, the Fallout 1 community has had an issue with people cheating in the past. As a preventative measure to combat against cheating, all any % speedruns of Fallout 1 that are under 6 minutes in length or a world record require some additional proof after the run ends. Because this run is a combination of the any % runs for all the individual Fallouts, we must abide by these verification rules since this Fallout 1 run is part of a world record. Before you ask, yes, I did do the verification in every anthology record attempt after Fallout 1, just in case it ended up being the record run. This verification consists of demonstrating that all the main rats in the intro cave are present, as well as that you can get random encounters in the wasteland. This is required even if you ran into all rats in the cave in your run, and also if you got encounters in your run, as I did. You can never be too safe with verification that your game isn't modified. You may have noticed my timer is also paused right now while I set up Fallout 2. This is because of something called a load remover, but I'll get to explaining that in a second. We begin the Fallout 2 run in very similar fashion to Fallout 1, by playing as our female protagonist, Kobitron. The Fallout 2 run begins by having to complete the Temple of Trials just outside of our hometown of Arroyo. Unfortunately, the combat glitch was patched going into Fallout 2, so we can't just use that to bypass all of our enemies in this game. The Temple of Trials mostly consists of running around some ants and trying to exit combat whenever possible, as well as picking up some bombs to blow up a door. As I mentioned earlier, speed clicking is still a thing in Fallout 2, so I'll be utilizing that very much throughout the full run. In a moment, I'll be arming a bomb to explode in 1 minute. Rather than wait the full minute, I just use first aid on myself, and that skips the time that I have to wait for the bomb to explode. The rest of the temple is just more ant avoidance, as well as using speech to convince our fellow tribesman Cameron that we shouldn't fight. When we exit the temple, we'll be back in Arroyo and we'll make our break to the world map, whereupon we'll head down south to San Francisco. If you're familiar with Fallout 2, you'll notice that when we get to the world map, my movement speed on it is very fast compared to normal. When Fallout 2 was originally released, your movement speed on the world map actually wasn't capped. Instead, your movement speed was tied more or less to your processor speed. This was later patched out of the game and is currently patched out in all official releases of the game in version 1.02. However, the official releases of the game now include what's called the high-res patch. The high-res patch is an official part of the game and allows for the user to customize their game configs to make the game a little bit more bearable by today's standards, whether it be resolution fixes or other things like fade time modifiers. One of the options included in this patch allows for the user to turn off the world map speed cap that was introduced after the game was released. Because this is an official part of the release and not a third-party modification, we allow modifications with the high-res patch to be used in speedruns. After we arrive in San Francisco, we immediately head over to the merchant Lao Chu and pickpocket all of his caps off of him. We then peruse his inventory very quickly, looking for a couple items, but he didn't spawn with them, so we have to exit San Francisco, waste 4 days, and re-enter. On my way out, I quickly made a save right next to the exit for a glitch that we'll be doing later on. Upon wasting a couple days to refresh Lao Chu's inventory, we head back to shop with him again. There are several items we need to spawn on him, which he had all of but one last time we checked. The one he didn't have was plastic explosives, which luckily spawned in his inventory after our excursion on the map. We promptly buy one from him, but then immediately decide we don't want it anymore and place it back in his pocket. Seemingly, Lao Chu doesn't necessarily want these bombs back, and it takes a couple times to truly convince him to accept his fate. After he's passed away, we have free reign to take whatever we want from his shop with no repercussions. The full list of items that we wanted to spawn in his inventory are plastic explosives, dynamite, mentats, as well as some power armor. Alternatively, we can substitute the mentats for some psycho and some of the extra dynamite for super stim packs, but he didn't spawn with psycho and extra dynamite is faster than super stims. We're going to be using the dynamite and plastic explosives to kill a couple people along the way, and we'll use the mentats very shortly to lower our intelligence for when we talk to the hubologists. Our main goal of the speedrun and beating Fallout 2 is to destroy the Enclave's oil rig, which will effectively complete the game. The issue though is that we have to get there first. Our first step in getting there is killing Ken Lee, who is one of the representatives for the Shi Emperor. We do this by arming a couple bombs and gifting them to Ken Lee. After we give him the bombs, we're going to go stand by the entrance and use first aid on ourselves to pass enough time for the bombs to explode. When we do this, we're going to make sure that we're sneaking though, because it'll skip a turn or two of all of his followers around who will freak out when the bombs go off. After Ken Lee eventually dies, we're going to be performing a glitch called save warping. When I exit to the general San Francisco area, I'm going to make a quick save followed by loading the save I made by the exit to the world map. I'll follow this by exiting to the world map, quitting to the main menu, and then loading the quick save. This will put us in the world map as the character from the quick save, bypassing having to run through the full city just to get to the world map. On the world map, I passed a day to initiate the minus intelligence debuff of the mentats that I took when arming the bombs to kill Ken Lee. I then re-entered the city, pressing 6 to go straight to the hubologist compound by the Golden Gate Bridge. Here, walls are merely a suggestion. Here, I spoke with the first hubologist in the room in order to lower the force fields and allow me to approach Oz 9. When I talk to Oz 9, I essentially complete the quest for killing the Shi Emperor, since Ken Lee serves as a suitable substitute as a victim. I should also mention that throughout Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, you may have noticed that doors open pretty quickly for me. This is done by just quick saving as doors are opening. If you quick save while the animation is going on, then the animation just ends. Once I'm done with the hubologist, I save warp again to the world map and pass another couple days in order to regain all of my intelligence. This time when I re-enter the city, I press 3 to go straight to the ship that I'll be taking to get to the oil rig. In the ship titled the PMV Valdez, I head up to the bridge and use the tanker computer to head over to the Enclave's oil rig. When I arrive at the rig, I immediately head over to the far east in the entry hall to open a big door that we'll be coming back to later. I then get ready to head downstairs by putting on my power armor and also leveling up speech and steel. After leveling these, we begin our journey through the oil rig. The only direction that you're able to speed click in while wearing power armor is northwest, due to the running animation of the armor. Because of this, our movement is incredibly slow compared to normal, but the armor is necessary to make it through this section undetected. We are able to unequip our power armor for a brief moment in this electric paneled maze in order to move faster, but we can't leave it off for too long, otherwise we might take too much damage and die. In order to finish the game, we have 4 tasks to complete in the oil rig. The first is to retrieve the Gek for our hometown Arroyo. The second is to get the presidential access key from President Dick Richardson. The third is to initiate a reactor meltdown to destroy the oil rig, and the last is to defeat Frank Horrigan and escape from the oil rig with our life. Currently, we're trying to get the Gek, which is in a locker in this room off to the side of the maze. We did take a lot of damage here and died, but I was quick saving all throughout the maze and was able to pick up right where I left off. After we retrieve the Gek, we can then exit the maze and begin making our way towards President Dick Richardson. On our way to the president, we're sure to say hello to his stupid, thick secretary. When we approach the president, he will begin talking to us, but we can just press 0 to close out of his dialogue. I then offer the president a trade of some explosives in exchange for the presidential access key. He initially says no, but after I propose the trade a second time, he happily accepts, on the condition that I come back later for the access key. We then head down to the reactor level of the oil rig to speak with a balding scientist named Tom Murray. When we speak to Tom, we're able to use our high speech skill to convince him to overload the reactor, causing a meltdown. This gives us 10 minutes to finish our business in the oil rig and leave. When we returned to the presidential level, we noticed that President Richardson was irresponsible with the dynamite we gave him. Luckily, he held up his end of the bargain and left the access key on his body for us. Now that we've initiated the reactor meltdown, have the Gek, and also have the access key, we just have one more thing to do, which is to defeat Frank Horrigan. Making our way to the final area of the game, we're able to use our high speech skill to convince Sergeant Granite to fight against Horrigan with us. We can then unequip our armor for good for that last little bit of extra move speed. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but we really don't do any fighting in Fallout 1 or 2, and our character really isn't built for it. Thankfully, we can use the presidential access key to enable some turrets to attack Horrigan as well. After having assembled our army for the final fight, we can sit back and relax while the big scary man is killed. One fun little tidbit is that when Horrigan dies, he is supposed to have a death animation where he gets ripped in half. Watching that animation is pretty slow, but if you have your violence level in the settings set to minimum, then Horrigan will just take a knee instead of being bisected, saving about 20 seconds. The run is going to end after Horrigan dies and I exit the room, cueing the final cinematics and credits. This run, unlike Fallout 1, doesn't have any additional verification to do afterwards, nor do any of the other Fallouts. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, now is as good a time as any to discuss the load remover that I alluded to earlier. In speedrunning, we use a program called LiveSplit to time our runs. LiveSplit has a built-in feature called the load remover. The load remover is used for PC speedruns wherein it constantly reads the memory values of the game. When the game enters a loading state, the load remover reads the marker indicating that it's loading and pauses the timer automatically. This is done so at the end of our run, our final time is only the time that we were actually playing the game and not sitting at a load screen. This is standard for most speedruns done on PC. The reasoning behind this is that because people build their own PCs, some people will be financially capable of purchasing faster parts than other people. Naturally, those people have faster loading screens and therefore would be at a significant advantage to someone with a slower computer. If we time the game in real time rather than game time, the person with a slower computer wouldn't be able to compete fairly with the person who has fast loads. This problem is completely eliminated by using a load remover. In this anthology run, all of my loads in Fallout 3, New Vegas, and 4 are removed by live split, but also the timer pauses between games. This is because, for some people, certain games take a while to launch based on their computers. A brief example of this is that for some reason, my PC will sometimes take over a minute to launch Fallout 3 or New Vegas for absolutely no reason. This is something completely out of my control and is just based on my computer. It would be unfair to include these setup times in our final playing time, so the timer is programmed to pause while no game is being played. With that being said, let's move on to Fallout 3. Rather than start with pressing New Game, Fallout 3 runs begin by loading a pre-made save after the intro where you're born. The reason for this is just because a while ago, the Fallout 3 speedrunning community decided that there was no point in watching the opening scene where you're born because it's an unskippable 1-minute cutscene with no speed tech. Special stats don't matter in the Fallout 3 run, so we dump them all into strength since that's the fastest way to get through this section. In both Fallout 3 and New Vegas, you're able to skip some dialogues by quick saving and quick loading. Every time you see my screen flash black in Fallout 3, that's what's happening. I have quick save and quick load bound to my mouse buttons so that it's easier to do it in rapid succession. You can also use quick saving and quick loading to clip through walls and out of bounds. After skipping some of Liam Neeson's lines and pushing him to a dialogue trigger, we fast forward 9 years to our 10th birthday party. As a speedrunner, I want to avoid all social interaction, so I clip out of my party using quick saving and quick loading and decide to spend the day with my dad's friend in a dimly lit basement. Who knows, maybe a camera will get involved later. Let's see where the day takes us. We speak briefly with Jonas and then with Liam Neeson, who will hand us our very own BB gun. When moving towards the firing range, we shoot Jonas once to skip a dialogue that he would typically have with Liam. When I move around in the vault, you'll notice I do a weird jumping thing that involves flicking my camera around. This is called stop hopping. If you hold W and jump, flick your camera to the side and forward, let go of W when you land and jump again, and then begin to hold W again and repeat, you can chain together a bunch of jumps that move you at about 1.6 times your normal movement speed. We just have to make sure we don't bonk our head on the ceiling. Hey, there's that camera. 6 years pass and we awaken Liam's office, getting lectured about wanting to skip the goat. After finishing talking to Liam, we decide to take matters into our own hands and break all known laws of physics to skip the goat anyways. By falling out of bounds, we do what's called COC and spawn elsewhere in the vault. When we do this in Vault 101, it immediately places us in the segment where we need to escape. COC stands for center on cell and is the term for when you fall far enough out of bounds and hit an invisible plane. Bethesda didn't want you falling forever if you managed to fall through the map, so they added these planes that spawn you back at a predetermined location if you fall far enough. This is a feature present in Fallout 3, New Vegas, and 4, and is used in all 3 speedruns. Each interior cell has its own set location, and for some reason, as I said earlier, the one in Vault 101 triggers the escape sequence. Once we exit the vault, we immediately head up to the top of a nearby cliff and do a glitch called Speed Cripple. The short explanation is that I make a quick save at the top of the cliff and quick load the moment I break my legs, and it makes me move faster. What's actually happening is a bit more involved. In Fallout 3 and New Vegas, when you break a leg, the game does a few things. One of those things is that it removes 60 units from your base move speed of 100 units to make you have a move speed of 40 units. When you get rid of your broken leg, either by healing, sleeping, or loading an old save, the game adds 60 units back to your move speed to make you move at 100 units again. By quick saving the moment we break our legs, the game's memory bugs out and adds 60 units of move speed to our character after it's already fully loaded our character with 100 units of move speed, giving us 160 units of move speed. Speed Cripple typically persists through loading saves, meaning we can safely quick save and quick load after we get it to work. However, you can lose Speed Cripple if either you quit to the main menu, desktop, or you cripple your leg again. You may be asking why I'm not stop hopping in addition to Speed Cripple. Stop hopping actually doesn't add any additional speed to Speed Cripple. At best, you'll move at the same speed as you would when running normally with Speed Cripple, as I'm doing now. Right now, I'm making my way towards the Citadel to discover the fast travel location. This is so that when we escape Raven Rock later, we have a location near the Jefferson Memorial that we can fast travel to. Realistically, we don't need to fast travel to a location near the Jefferson Memorial, and we could do this running segment at the end of the game. But if we're going to be at least slightly in this general direction because of doing Speed Cripple, it makes sense geographically to head to the Citadel now. Along the way, I'll be using quick save quick load clips to exit the intended play area and take a more direct line towards the Citadel. Once I arrive there, I'll fast travel back to Vault 101 and begin making my way to Little Lamplight. Throughout this run, you may occasionally hear someone say the line, "I guess it was nothing." This is actually our character talking. We left the vault before we are technically an adult, so the game still considers us to be a child even though we are approaching our late teens. Because we're a child, we share default voice lines with all other child characters in the game. This means that whenever we exit combat, we say the default voice line, "I guess it was nothing." While we run across the wastes, random things will attack us, causing for us to enter combat. Once we get far enough away from the enemy, the game has us say the line. One thing you may be wondering about is what patch we're playing Fallout 3 on. This is actually the most up-to-date version of the game with no mods installed. Fallout New Vegas is also speedran on the most up-to-date version as well, but we'll get there soon enough. You'll also notice the number 60 in the top right corner of my screen. This is my frame rate. In all of the 3D Fallout games, we cap our frame rate to 60 FPS since if you play it above 60, the physics in the games become unreliable. In Fallout 3 and New Vegas, playing it above 60 FPS mostly affects your running speed, causing for it to be super inconsistent. In Fallout 4, playing it above 60 FPS accelerates all of the physics in the game, which does include your running speed as well. In order to make sure that all speedrunners are playing under the same set of conditions and the competition is an even playing field, we cap our frame rate to 60. If you're wondering, I use DX Story to cap my frame rate and RTSS to display it. If you're familiar with Fallout 3, you may be aware that upon leaving Vault 101, you can head straight to Smith Casey's garage to find Liam Neeson and skip a sizable part of the main quest. Well, in the speedrun, things are a bit different. In order to complete the main quest in Fallout 3, you need to enter 216 in the keypad in the Jefferson Memorial. In order to be able to do that, we need to have the GEC. Typically, you aren't able to get the GEC until after you rescue Mr. Neeson. Fortunately for us, we have the ability to clip through walls, so getting the GEC early becomes a possibility. This means that we're able to head straight for Vault 87 where the GEC is located. In order to get to Vault 87, we must enter Little Lamplight and perform a series of clips which will allow for us to access the door to enter Murder Pass, followed by Vault 87. When we're in Little Lamplight, we're going to be doing a pretty neat glitch called Void Swimming. If you're out of bounds in a cell in Fallout 3 in New Vegas, and there's some water extending out of bounds, you can swim in the water for a short distance past where the water ends before you eventually fall into the void in COC. If instead you make a quick save while you're briefly swimming past the extents of the water and then move back into the water in quick load, you'll then be back in the void and able to swim infinitely past the extents of the water. This allows for us to travel well out into the void to access the door to Murder Pass. I'm getting a little ahead of myself though, and you'll see all of this in a minute. In the meantime, there are two other things that you may have noticed built into my stream layout. The first is the weird webcam footage in the top right, and the second is the heart with the number next to it on bottom. The webcam footage is me using a basketball headband to strap my Logitech C920 webcam to the top of my head. This was an idea given to me by another speedrunner named Kung Cobra that he did once or twice, which I adopted permanently to my stream. I had some spare green sheets, so I hung those up behind my monitors to green screen out the wall behind them. The heart with the number next to it is actually my heart rate. During my streams, I wear a Garmin heart rate monitor that connects to my PC wirelessly via an ANT Plus USB stick. I added this to the stream just as a fun additional peripheral so that people watching live can see when I get excited or nervous throughout the run. Once we arrive at Murder Pass in Vault 87, our main goal is to get the Gek and get out. Well, by mean get out, I mean captured by the Enclave. Getting captured by the Enclave and brought back to Raven Rock after securing the Gek is actually required to complete the game. In order to make sure that the Enclave spawn, we have to activate the fire alarm that is located on the same floor as the Gek. If we forget to do so, then the Enclave won't spawn, and we'll be standing there like an idiot with our Gek in our hands. Also, when we go to grab the Gek, we use a glitch called third-person interaction to grab it. In Fallout 3 and New Vegas, and to some extent 4, if you're in third-person view, you can actually interact with things through walls by turning your camera so that your point of view is sort of in the wall. We use this to grab the Gek in this run, and then we'll be using it again later in New Vegas. As you can tell by my heart rate, this is one of the more intense parts of the run.
Now try and hide! Die! I'm hungry! Aha! Gotcha!
Once we get flashbanged, we have to sit and listen to Colonel Autumn for a bit. The fastest language for Fallout 3 is actually Japanese because this exchange between him and the soldier is slightly shorter in it. Unfortunately, Fallout 3 was never released in Japanese for PC, it was only ever part of the console release. Because we would have to use unofficial patches and mods to play in Japanese on PC, we just play in English instead since it's the second fastest language overall.
I'll have the techs come down and remove it immediately, sir.
You're certain he's unharmed?
Yes, sir. He'll pass out shortly, but we can revive him.
Excellent. Prepare him for transport immediately.
Right away, sir.
Once we awaken Raven Rock, we're going to just briefly talk with Colonel Autumn, followed by quick saving and quick loading to skip dialogue between him and President Eden, followed by some precisely timed quick saving and quick loading to skip some more of Eden's lines. The rest of the Fallout 3 run just consists of clipping to progress through Raven Rock, grabbing the modified FEV canister from Eden, exiting Raven Rock, and heading to the Jefferson Memorial to complete the game. There isn't much to say about it considering all of the information I've dumped on you so far, so I'll let you enjoy actually hearing the game for once and not my voice.
Retreating! Retreating!
You have the vibe.
Hey there.
You.
Fallout New Vegas utilizes a lot of the same mechanics as Fallout 3, with things like quick saving and quick loading to skip dialogues and clip through walls, except they aren't as instant in this game as they are in 3. This means that whenever I quick save quick load, you'll see a brief loading screen rather than a flash of black. However, we can't use quick saving and quick loading to skip the intro dialogue from Doc Mitchell, which you'll see in a moment. The reason for this is that we can only quick save and quick load when we have control of our character, and we don't gain control of our character until after we stand up. Fallout New Vegas, like all the other Fallouts in this run, is ran on very easy so that we take less damage and dish out more. We also play New Vegas with the Caravan Pack DLC installed so that we begin the game with a sturdy Caravan shotgun. This is the only Fallout game in the run that utilizes DLC, but like all others, no mods are installed for this speedrun. One of the first things that you'll notice about New Vegas that's different from any other Fallout so far is that the audio is in Italian. This is because Doc Mitchell's unskippable intro dialogue is actually 4 seconds faster in Italian than in English and is the fastest language overall. Turns out New Vegas actually is a spaghetti western. Once we affirm Doc that he got it correct that we're male, we stand up and gain control of our character. Special stats matter in the Fallout New Vegas run, unlike in Fallout 3. For our stats, we lower strength to 1 and perception to 4 in order to give us the ability to max out both endurance and charisma. We max endurance for the extra health, even though we don't actually need to. It's just that we lose no time by maxing it due to the delay in the menus, so we max it anyways for the benefit. We then max charisma so that we will begin the game with a high speech skill, which will come in handy later. We follow this up with some precise dialogue choices that are super important. For skills, we leave the default save for swapping out melee weapons for tagging guns, and we select good-natured for our perk. We pick good-natured since it gives us an increase to speech, and we want to max out speech by the end of the run. Once we've made up our mind on perks, we talk with Doc once more, followed by leaving his house. Once we're outside, we're going to immediately equip our shotgun and fast travel to Good Springs, which is discovered as a location by default. We then head over to the Good Springs General Store and shop with Chet. We're going to buy at least 1 round of a special type of ammo that can be used in the 357 revolver and look to see if Chet spawned with the revolver in his inventory. Unfortunately, Chet's lapse in judgment on what he should have in stock will cost him his life. While it doesn't always spawn in his shop to buy, the revolver always spawns in his personal inventory, so we take the revolver from there. We can't just kill Chet right away because we need to be sure that we have at least 2 different types of ammo for the revolver, and Chet only spawns with the standard ammo type on him, which is why we had to buy some special ammo first. The reason for all of this is to do the glitch I'm doing right now, which is called reload dashing. First, let me say that right now I'm making my way towards the Vegas Strip, and along the way I'll be discovering the Hidden Valley and Black Mountain fast travel locations to return to later in the run. Reload dashing is the fastest method of movement in New Vegas. The glitch is performed by holding W to move forward, swapping your ammo type for the revolver, cancelling the reload animation, and unequipping the gun in the Pip-Boy, all while still holding W. This will launch you forward a considerable distance. The way this works is that in New Vegas, when you finish the reload animation for a gun with a 1 bullet at a time reload animation, your character is forced to move forward a small amount even if you aren't holding W. When you hold W and do all the actions as I mentioned earlier, the game more or less reads it as one giant W input and will shoot you forward. This is only able to be performed in New Vegas and isn't in 3. The reason for this is that not only does Fallout 3 not have special ammo types that would allow for this glitch to be performed with, but Fallout 3 doesn't even have any guns with a 1 bullet at a time reload animation. You'll also notice that moving at high speeds and bumping into objects tends for you to get shot in the air. We try and prevent this by quick saving and quick loading, which resets your momentum to 0, allowing for you to stop mid-launch and also eliminate fall damage. After we launched ourselves to the monorail and enter New Vegas proper, we briefly speak with Victor and head over to the Ultralux. There, we're going to stop hop on back to my number 1 frick in New Vegas, Mortimer. We're going to talk with him and immediately exit because we're going to be doing the Yes Man ending, which only requires us to just meet each individual tribe and not necessarily quest for them. The Yes Man quest line is the most bare bones, requiring us to just pass judgment on each of the tribes for whether or not they should live. All of the other factions that we can end the game with, like Mr. House, the NCR, etc., require us to actively participate in a lot more events, whereas with Yes Man, we can just say we aren't interested. Once we exit the Ultralux, we dash over to the tops real quick, where we're going to hit a trigger and quick save quick load before talking to Swank. This allows for us to be able to level up after we speak with Swank. After we talk to Swank, we'll have all our weapons back and be able to level up. We level up survival to at least 45 and then proceed to dump every point we get from here on out into speech. After our 3rd level up here, we'll be able to select Travel Light as a perk, which will increase our running speed by 10% whenever we're wearing no armor or light armor. Instead of playing as a female and screwing Benny in his room, instead we decide to just screw him over in the lobby. After looting his body for the platinum chip and his sweet key, we head upstairs to his room via the elevator and clip out of bounds immediately to COC in his room. Here we meet the young political candidate himself and begin our descent into madness. In order to complete Yes Man's questline, we need to have him installed into Mr. House's computer. This means that we have to evict the person currently occupying Mr. House's computer.
Salve! Che...
At the Lucky 38, we perform a clip in the penthouse level to go out of bounds and allow for us to use the 3rd-person interaction glitch to access the control room. Here, we peacefully euthanize Mr. House and make our swift exit. On our way out, we'll level up once and select a random perk that doesn't really matter. You may notice that I'm able to distribute my skill points very quickly, and this is because I use both the right arrow and click on the increase button. I have a button on my mouse that functions as my right arrow key, allowing me to do this without moving my hands across the keyboard. Once we're out of the Lucky 38, we get a talking to by an NCR trooper, after which we head right over to the Gomorrah. After a friendly conversation with the doorman, we have sufficient experience with their tribe to make a judgment call on whether or not they should be eradicated. We now are beginning the segment of the run where we have to go and meet all the tribes so that we can let Yes Man know who we want to let live before he installs himself into Mr. House's computer. The first tribe that we're going to meet after exiting the strip is the Boomers. The Boomers live relatively nearby and are easy to reach by just reload dashing to the east along some railroad tracks. After arriving at their gate, we'll be taken to their leader Pearl, who will notify that we'll help them with some problems they've been having. In the meantime, you may be asking why I didn't try and get Speed Cripple in New Vegas and use that in junction with reload dashing. The answer to that is very simple. You can't reload dash with the broken leg animation, and you have the animation during Speed Cripple. If we were to get Speed Cripple, then we would just walk across the wasteland instead of doing whatever the hell reload dashing is. Technically, you can reload dash sideways when you have Speed Cripple, but it's not worth it and is overall slower.
Resta là, non muoverti.
Inizierò da qui.
Benvenuto, tesoro.
After talking to Pearl, we head out and fast travel to the Hidden Valley. The Hidden Valley is where one of two remaining tribes is located, and that tribe is the Brotherhood of Steel. The thing about the Brotherhood is that they wear armor, so instead of talking with them, we just have to shoot them once to realize that they would be harder than your average tribe to kill, and we should just leave them alone as well. The last tribe for us to meet is the Great Khans, who are located in Red Rock Canyon. In order to get there, we fast travel to Good Springs and proceed to reload dash our way on over. The thing that's different about meeting the Great Khans is that instead of actually interacting with any members in the Red Rock Canyon, we just have to hit a trigger in the middle of the area and leave. This counts as having met them, which I chalk up to in the lore as admiring their camp so much you couldn't even fathom bringing harm to the people who live there. After having met all the individual tribes, we fast travel back to the strip and proceed to tell Yes Man that we should leave them all alone, followed by agreeing to meet Yes Man in the Lucky 38.
Gli occhi del potente Caesar.
Ehi, ciao ancora! Ciao, questo è...
In the Lucky 38, Yes Man will install himself into Mr. House's computer and proceed to give us a demonstration about the Securitron upgrades in the Lucky 38 basement.
Wow! Avvicinati alla...
Normally, the demonstration is long and drawn out, but we can skip it with a combination of waiting 1 hour and quick save quick loading to skip all of Yes Man's lines, followed by using the third person interaction glitch to access the elevator and leave the basement.
Wow! Avvicinati all'area di dimostrazione, per favore.
After finishing the demonstration, Yes Man will ask us whether or not we'd like to become involved with the assassination of President Kimball. We've already killed one president in this anthology run, so we decide it's best not to get involved. We're then tasked with using the override chip at the El Dorado substation. Earlier in the run, we discovered Black Mountain, so we just fast traveled to there since it's near to the substation. After installing the override chip, we head back to the Lucky 38 and speak with Yes Man once more. When we talk to Yes Man, we let him know that we're finally ready to head to the Hoover Dam and finish the game. The huge battle sequence at the dam can be largely bypassed with our reload dashing. We can skip cleanly from the first section of the dam to the second by launching ourselves around the building in the middle of the dam. Once we make it to the other side of the dam, we have a clear shot to make it to the Legate's camp. When we finally make it to the camp, we round out the run by using our 100 speech to convince Lanius to not fight us, followed by talking with General Lee Oliver and Yes Man. The New Vegas run officially ends on the brief loading screen between talking with Yes Man and the end slides.
Caesar è in...
Immagino che non sia un...
Hai fatto un super lavoro.
If you've made it this far in the video and are still watching, I'd just like to say thank you before Fallout 4 starts. I work a full-time job and speedrunning is something I do on the side for fun, but the amount of support that everyone has showed, especially over the last couple months, is immense and it really means a lot. Soon we're going to be hitting 50,000 subscribers, which is a number that I never even considered a possibility when I started doing speedruns 2.5 years ago. So again, thank you, I appreciate you guys, and your kind words mean more than you realize. Fallout 4 is hands down my best speedrun of all the runs in the anthology, and is the perfect anchor to end the run with. The first thing that you'll notice about the game is that it's being played in French, which is because the dialogue is about 11 seconds faster than English and is the fastest language overall. Fallout 4 is played on version 1.1.30, which is one of the first patched versions of the game. We downpatch our game because there are 2 glitches that we're going to be doing later in the run that are only possible on early versions of the game. For our character presets, I pick the Asian and the Ginger because they're the presets I like best, but when I pick them, I cycle through them in a strange pattern. This is actually the time where Codsworth will be in the house, because he roams the house before you start the game, and talking with him while he's walking back to the kitchen saves a second. The intro to Fallout 4 is pretty slow, and mostly consists of just talking to everyone the moment they begin their lines, which skips their lines.
Codsworth. Hey, Stressor!
Je crois qu'il est temps qu'on emmène Codsworth en révision, non?
After talking to Nora and Codsworth, we wait for the Vault Tech rep. When we assign our special stats, we're going to max out both endurance and agility, put 1 point into intelligence, and then dump the rest into luck. Endurance directly affects the drain rate of your AP when you sprint. The more you have, the slower it will drain, and the longer we can sprint for. Agility directly affects the total amount of AP you have. The more you have, the longer you can sprint for. Intelligence affects the amount of XP you get for completing tasks like discovering locations. We want our intelligence to be only 2 rather than anything higher. When you level up in Fallout 4, you automatically have both your HP and AP completely replenished. Ideally, we want to level up at some point in the run to replenish our AP and get a free bar of sprint the moment we run out of AP. Luckily, if we have just 2 intelligence, the amount of XP that we get throughout the run is perfectly added up so that we level up the moment we're going to run out of AP during a prolonged running segment. If we had any additional points into intelligence, sure, we might level up more, but additional levels don't benefit us in any way in the speedrun, whereas we save time by leveling up at the right time with 2 points of intelligence. Like I said earlier, we dump the remainder of our points into luck, but that's not because it benefits us in any way later. There's no benefit to putting our points into any other stat, and luck is just physically the fastest one to dump any remaining points into. There aren't any perks or passive buffs that the other special stats give us that would benefit us in the speedrun, so we don't really care about them and just throw them into luck. After we've completed all of our duties in the house, it's time for the bombs to drop and to enter Vault 111.
Oui, des explosions nucléaires sont confirmées à New York et en Pennsylvanie. Oh mon Dieu.
Thinking only of ourselves, we parkour our way across the neighborhood, leaving our spouse and son to fend for themselves. When we approach the gate to the vault, we talk to a military officer and mash E to talk with him again as we finish the word list in our sentence. If we time it correctly, it will completely skip the officer's line and we can run past him immediately.
On est sur la liste. Laissez-nous entrer. On est sur la liste. Laissez-nous entrer. On est sur la liste. Laissez-nous entrer.
Bonne chance.
On est sur la liste.
Suivez-moi, allez.
Qu'est-ce qui va se passer pour ceux qui sont de l'autre côté?
Montez sur la plateforme. Mettez-vous au milieu.
When we step onto the elevator to enter the vault, we notice our spouse and son somehow made it against all odds. We then get to watch a 100% scientifically accurate explosion that totally wouldn't kill us instantly as we lower into the vault.
Accroche-toi. On peut pas aller plus vite.
Aidez-moi!
Once we're in Vault 111, we're going to head down the linear pathway and talk with the doctor before entering the cryopod. This will trigger a cutscene about 2 minutes in length, which gives me just enough time to go over a few glitches that I'll be performing in the vault and throughout the run. The first one, which is the most straightforward, is item climbing and clipping. If you pick up an object by holding E so that it's not added to your inventory, and then have it just the right distance from you and in the correct orientation, you can use it to push yourself either over walls or through them. This is done by holding the object, looking down, and walking backwards into a wall or corner. Typically, you just have to hold down S while doing this to walk straight backwards, but a couple times this is made easier by holding a combination of directional keys. This is done a handful of times throughout the run using guns like pipe pistols, but will be done in the vault using cones, which is a variant of item climbing known as VLC clipping. We're going to be doing 2 in the vault to skip having to run down some hallways and to skip opening the big vault door. The second glitch that I'm going to do shortly is called punch warping. In Fallout 4, when you attempt to melee attack an enemy or object like a frag mine using VATS, you can be out of typical melee range when targeting the enemy. Once you confirm your attack, the game will more or less teleport you next to your target and you'll finish your melee attack. Well, if you're standing in a position where, in order to move you to next to the target, the game will need to clip you through objects or place you out of bounds, the game spends an additional second between when you confirm to attack and when you actually teleport next to your target, thinking about how to pathfind you to the target. If you cancel the VATS attack while the game is thinking, then the coordinates of the location where you were standing get stored in the game's memory. Then, the next time that you melee attack an enemy in VATS, the game will teleport you back to the coordinates where you set up your punch warp. I'll get to how coordinates work in Fallout 4 in a moment. The third glitch that I'll be doing soon is called cover sliding. Fallout 4 has a cover mechanic where you can aim around corners with your gun while still being partially in cover. If you stop aiming while using this cover mechanic, and the moment you stop aiming you also enter third person, then you more or less interrupt the animation of you stop aiming from cover. The game is very upset that you interrupted this animation, so much so that the next time you're in first person and take out your gun, the game will have you complete this animation, but it wants you to complete the animation in the same place as where you started it. This means that when you take out your gun in first person, the game will slingshot you back to the coordinates of where you set up your punch warp. Notice how I said cover sliding slingshots you, while punch warping teleports you. These two glitches serve near identical purposes but have very different methods of getting you to your destination. Because cover sliding slingshots you, you can bump into objects along the way which throw off your trajectory and also can stop you in your place. This also means, though, that you can slide through locations and discover them during your cover slide. Because punch warping teleports you, then you instantly appear at the destination. This is great for interior areas because you can just jump from the beginning to the end without having to worry about walls. Typically, punch warping is preferable since it's 100% consistent, but at the same time, you can't discover locations during it. I should also mention that punch warps can be stored through saves, wherein you can set one up, load an old save, and trigger it, but this isn't doable with cover slides. The way the coordinate system in Fallout 4 works is every location in the game, whether it be the wasteland or an interior cell like Vault 111 or the Institute, is set up on a 3-dimensional coordinate plane. The location of yourself, as well as every NPC and item, is kept track of with this coordinate system. Instead of each area having its own unique coordinate grid with unique numbers, each area has a coordinate grid based around an origin point placed somewhere randomly in the area. When you set up a punch warp or a cover slide in one area, like say Vault 111 at the origin point of 000, and then trigger it in another area like the wasteland, then you'll get sent to the coordinates where you set it up, 000, but those coordinates in the wasteland. Coincidentally, because the wasteland is so large compared to interior cells, any punch warp or cover slide set up in an interior cell will have the stored coordinates be relatively close to the origin in the grand scheme of things. This means that whenever you trigger a cover slide or punch warp in the wasteland, you'll get sent towards the origin point, which is near the center of the map by Green Tech Genetics. In the vault, I set up my punch warp using some rad roaches and standing between the wall and some boxes, and then set up my cover slide in the final room while waiting for the elevator. When I exit Vault 111, I'm going to head over to a nearby rock on the hillside where I'll trigger my cover slide. I position myself there since it's in line with Sanctuary, so when I slide I'll discover the location. In addition to that, it's low enough to the ground that I hopefully won't die from fall damage, whereas if I triggered my cover slide from the vault platform, I'd for sure die from fall damage. When I trigger the cover slide, it will bring me to the outskirts of Concord, which isn't the center of the map, but it's in the general direction of the center of the map. Cover slides sort of have a max distance they can slingshot you, and luckily Concord is right where we need to go. You may have noticed that I completely skipped picking up the Pip-Boy in the vault. You can actually exit the vault just fine without the Pip-Boy, but the game doesn't like that and it automatically gives it to you upon exiting. The thing is though, is that the Pip-Boy is invisible. The Pip-Boy will only become visible again when I either enter power armor or quit to the main menu and reload my save. We're going to be doing the latter shortly, so we'll have our Pip-Boy soon enough. The only downfall to this is that because we don't pick up the Pip-Boy, we never brush the dust off the screen. This means that the Pip-Boy screen is full of dust and is a bit cloudy throughout the full run. When we land outside Concord, our main goal is to be sure to discover the Museum of Freedom location before triggering our punch warp and heading to the center of the map. We need to help out the Minutemen to a certain extent, but we need to have a certain quest before doing so. Otherwise, we would have to visit with them twice, which is not optimal. The quest that we need is the nuclear option, which, if you're familiar with the game, is the last quest in the main story before the end cinematic. The reason we need this quest is that it spawns an item on Sturges called the Institute Relay Targeting Sequence. We're going to be pickpocketing this item off of Sturgis when we rescue the Minutemen because we just need the item to complete the game and we don't need to actually side with the Minutemen. You may be asking how we're going to get the nuclear option if it's a late game quest. When we enter this sewer, we're going to quit to the main menu and reload the autosave that was made when entering. When you load a save that was made underwater from the main menu, you get spawned at the top of the water, which just so happens to be out of bounds in this sewer. We can then swim along a pipe and hit a trigger which automatically gives us the nuclear option quest. From there, we exit the sewer and begin heading towards Good Neighbor. Now, in order to complete the game, we need to buy some items. You may have noticed though that I haven't really done any killing or looting, so I don't have any caps. That's fine with us though, because one of the two glitches that is only possible on early patches of the game is the vendor glitch. I forgot to mention earlier, but the other of the two glitches is cover sliding. Anyways, the vendor glitch. If you purchase a stack of one item from a vendor, say some ammo, and then proceed to sell back one bullet, followed by the remainder of the stack, one bullet will remain locked in your inventory that you can sell over and over again. If you sell about 10 to 20 of these bullets and then attempt to buy back the full stack from the vendor, then you'll continually sell the stack back to the vendor over and over, essentially giving you infinite store credit. We're going to be doing this to Daisy, but first we pick up a frag mine outside of mass fusion because we can use frag mines to set up and deploy punch warps rather than rely on enemy positioning. After entering Good Neighbor through the back alley, we proceed to shop with Daisy and purchase a long list of items. Included in this list is a biometric scanner, radaway, stimpaks, both Destroyer's chest piece and left leg, another frag mine, some Molotov cocktails, and some weapons that will be used for item clipping later on. After buying all this, we proceed to steal a Fat Man and Mini Nuke from Cleo. We then serpentine to the exit and will bind everything upon exiting. The reasons for buying each of the items we bought are as follows. Biometric scanners are a required component to build the teleporter near the end of the run to enter the Institute. Radaway and Stimpaks are for our run across the glowing sea and just making sure we don't die at all throughout the run. Destroyer's chest piece reduces damage from humans by 15%, which will help with ensuring we don't die. Destroyer's left leg increases our movement speed by 10%, which naturally is great for the speedrun. The frag mine adds to our total count that will allow for us to set up and trigger punch warps wherever we want. The Molotov cocktails will be used in a moment in the Museum of Freedom for combat and also to manipulate enemy aggro. And lastly, as previously mentioned, the pipe pistol and shotguns we bought will be used to item clip. After binding everything, we run to discover the Boston Common, followed by fast traveling to the Museum of Freedom. As I enter the Museum of Freedom, I'll loot the dead Minuteman outside to get his Minuteman outfit, which I'll equip later and increases our agility by 1. I'll also throw a Molotov cocktail into the air as I enter the door, which will then hit the ground upon exiting the building again, which will make the game consider us to be an aggro and allow for us to enter the power armor on the roof with the fast, in-combat animation rather than the slow, typical one.
C'est quoi ce bordel?
Once inside, I'll clear out the raiders, which will cause for the Minutemen to open the door to the room they're holed up in. Technically, we can item clip into the room they're in and avoid having to kill the raiders. The problem with this though is that we have to pickpocket Sturgis and the Minutemen are impossible to interact with in any way unless all the raiders are killed and they open the door. Once we clear out all the raiders and the door is opened, I'll shoot Sturgis a handful of times, which will cause for the Minutemen to aggro to me. Once I put away my gun though, they'll forgive me and I'll be able to pickpocket Sturgis. Typically, when the door opens up, Preston has a long dialogue and we can't pickpocket Sturgis during it. However, by aggroing them, the dialogue is interrupted and we can steal the item. On our way out, we set up another cover slide. Outside, we're able to enter the power armor quickly thanks to the Molotov we threw earlier. We then proceed to jump off the roof and cover slide to Lexington, all the while not taking fall damage thanks to the power armor. Unfortunately, we got a rare bad cover slide in this run and had to awkwardly waddle to discover Lexington before fast traveling to it. Typically on this cover slide, we actually land inside of Lexington and have it discovered immediately, but we got a little unlucky this time. When we load in, we're going to ditch our power armor at the fast travel location and then run into Slocum Joe's and enter the basement. The reason we came here is that this is the location of the loyalty quest for the Railroad faction. Typically, in order to join the Railroad and have them trust you, you have to come here with Deacon and retrieve an item called Carrington's Prototype. If we come here alone though and clip into the room the prototype is in, and then we proceed to pick up the prototype and drop it again, the quest updates as if we had just retrieved the prototype and are ready to turn in the quest and join the Railroad. We don't actually need to pick the prototype back up after dropping it. Also, while in this area, we pick up a mini nuke that's chilling next to the prototype. After punch warping back to the entrance, we're good to go and actually join the Railroad. Upon exiting the basement, we fast travel to the Old Corner bookstore, which is a location we discovered as we were entering Good Neighbor. There, we will proceed to run to Old North Church, which upon entering, we clip into the basement using one of the guns we bought earlier. The most important part of the entire anthology run is actually coming up in a moment, but it's a blink and you miss it strat. If, when you enter the Old North Church, you don't proceed to run towards the Paul Revere statue and say Papa Paul bless, you will be cursed with 100 years of bad cover slides. It is of the utmost importance that you do this every time you do a Fallout 4 run. Papa Paul bless. Inside the church, we clip into the basement as I mentioned earlier and proceed to talk with the members of the Railroad who were apparently just sitting here waiting for someone to arrive so they could confront them. Unfazed by the fact that I just fell from the ceiling and appeared from nowhere, the Railroad will gladly accept me as their newest member. When we finish all the dialogue with Desdemona and Deacon, we'll then be part of the Railroad. We'll celebrate by setting up a cover slide in the corner behind Deacon and entering the Railroad HQ.
Continuez.
Donc on essaie de libérer les...
Non, je ne pense pas.
Il n'y a pas...
On a ce qu'on voulait. On va se séparer.
On fait une bonne équipe.
La meilleure. Et le petit nouveau a pensé mes plaies. Il m'a...
C'est pas... Deacon, est-ce que...
On a...
Moi, mais... Bien...
Ok, c'est un plaisir de vous rejoindre.
Visible.
Appelez-moi...
Ouais, mais l'emplacement de notre QG est l'un de nos secrets.
When we enter the HQ, we're going to pull up our Pip-Boy, followed by the perk chart. Here, we're going to take our only perks of the game, Action Boy and Solar Powered. Action Boy increases our AP regeneration rate by 25%, which is immense and helps out a ton throughout the run. Solar Powered increases both our strength and endurance by 2 whenever the in-game hours are between 6 AM and 6 PM. We follow this up by fast traveling to Lexington, followed by back to the HQ, and followed once more by to Boston Common. The reason for this is twofold. One reason why we do this fast travel is that it skips a dialogue that Desdemona would usually give welcoming you to the Railroad. The second reason is that it manipulates the in-game clock to be between 6 AM and PM so that we can take full advantage of Solar Powered in a long-running segment that we're about to do. First though, we need to head to Diamond City. On our way there, we're going to pick up a frag mine that's laying on the side of the road. Then, instead of entering Diamond City the intended way with talking to Piper, we simply VLC clip into the back area of the exterior and run into a loading zone. This puts us at the main entrance to Diamond City and skips the dialogue between Piper and Mayor McDonough. The reason we have to go to Diamond City is to enter Nick Valentine's detective agency. Nick is required to progress the main story later on, but he typically spawns in Vault 114 under Park Street Station. However, there's a trigger inside of his detective agency that, when entered by the player, causes for Nick to be automatically moved to the agency after dealing with Kellogg. By entering his agency now, when we return after dealing with Kellogg, Nick will be here rather than needing to be rescued from Vault 114. To get to the agency quickly in Diamond City, I trigger my cover slide after entering.
On ne peut que se demander s'il y a des gens qui existent. Là, tu dois bien avoir des ennemis. Quoi?
Vous avez bien dit que la chance finirait par tourner.
Upon exiting the agency, we fast travel back to Diamond City and exit. Right when I load in on the other side of the door, I make a save and begin running to the southwest corner of the map. We're heading this way to discover Virgil's lab, which is the farthest southwest we can go in the game. You may be asking why we have to run all the way there instead of just cover sliding or punch warping there. The reason for this is that Virgil's lab is so far southwest and the coordinates are so extreme that there are no other places in the game that have coordinates that are the same as the lab. This means that we can't just set up a cover slide somewhere and slingshot ourselves southwest, because it would just bring us back towards the center of the map. Along this run, I'm also going to be setting up a cover slide. Our goal after this glowing sea run is to head to Fort Hagen, which is on the west edge of the map and around the middle. Because we're in the far southwest corner, if we set up a cover slide and then go to the northwest corner and trigger the cover slide, we'll slide along the west edge of the map and we will stop around halfway at Fort Hagen. You may also be asking why I made that save outside of Diamond City. That's for a glitch called load warping. If you remember all the way back in Fallout 2, we did a glitch called save warping. Load warping is similar to save warping, but a little different and a lot more powerful. Load warping is performed by making a quick save and then loading an old save like the one I made at Diamond City. If, in the old save, I enter an area via a door or anything that has a fade to black and a loading screen, and during the fade to black I quick load, I'll load in on the other side of that door, but as the character from the quick save. This means that at any point I can load an old save and maintain progress, essentially allowing for me to fast travel out of buildings where I would normally have to run to exit the building before fast traveling. That's why I made a save outside of Diamond City, because the fade to black there is very long and load warping is very easy to do there. When we make it to Virgil's lab, I'm going to make a save there as well so we can load warp straight there later too. Ideally, we would like to load warp straight to our destinations whenever possible. The problem with this though is that load warps are incredibly hard to perform on doors. Luckily, in the cases of Virgil's lab in Diamond City, the entrances are open areas we walk into and there are no doors. In other cases though, like Nick's agency and the Railroad HQ, we would need to open a door, which makes the timing of the load warp incredibly difficult to do. Because of this, we load warp to Diamond City whenever possible and fast travel to our destination. The only time we're going to load warp using a door will be at the end of the run in the Institute. We take consolation in the fact that the Institute door is a sliding door, which has a much easier timing to load warp with rather than a traditional hinged one. After all, we don't want to do anything actually difficult in a speedrun. Coming up is when I'll be setting up my cover slide, followed by running up a giant hill to enter the crater of Adam. You may remember at the start of the run when I talked about a precisely timed level up thanks to only having 2 intelligence. That's going to be happening right when I discover the crater of Adam. If you watch my AP bar as I approach the location, I try to ensure that I have 0 AP as I discover it. This way I'll have maximum AP usage and sprint time before I discover the location and replenish my AP. After discovering Crater of Adam and leveling up, it's a straight shot to Virgil's lab. Upon discovering the lab, we make our save and fast travel to Lexington, which you may remember is where I ditched our power armor earlier. As we finish loading in, I'm going to mash E, which will cause for my character to begin entering the power armor during the fade-in. From there, I'll fast travel to Vault 111 and begin my cover slide towards Fort Hagen. Earlier, I said that to cover slide, you need to be in first person and have your gun out. You're going to notice that when I perform this cover slide, I'm actually in third person. This is a variation on the method to deploy cover slides. When you're in third person and pull up your Pip-Boy, the game considers you to be in first person as long as you have your Pip-Boy up. This means that if we are in third person with our gun out and then pull up our Pip-Boy, the game will consider us to be in first person, ergo triggering our cover slide. However, if we double tap tab to enter and exit the Pip-Boy very quickly, we will cover slide a short distance and be back in third person. We can actually enter the Pip-Boy again to move another short distance and so on and so forth. This method usually allows you to use a short slide about 4 to 5 times before your cover slide is completely used up. With this method of cover sliding, we're able to make it all the way to Fort Hagen. Here, we ditch our power armor for good and climb up to the area where you're supposed to exit at the end of Fort Hagen. We perform a variation of item clipping called horizontal gun clip to enter the elevator area and ride it down to meet Kellogg. To reach Kellogg, we drop a gun while we're in the elevator and item climb against a locker once the elevator doors open. We take out our Fat Man in preparation to talk with Kellogg because we can use the big gun skill check to intimidate him into handing over his cybernetic enhancements. After conversing with Kellogg, we pick up a military-grade circuit board, view the access logs on a nearby terminal, and load warp out to Diamond City. In Diamond City, we run on over to Nick's where we speak with him and Piper. They'll talk about where we should go next and decide the most logical place is the memory den.
Ça fait des semaines. Allez, Nicky, je te demande juste ton avis. Ça ferait un sacré papier, non?
C'est mon client, Piper. Tu peux pas t'empêcher de fourrer ton nez dans les affaires des autres.
Tiens, quand on parle du loup...
Vous revoilà. Et...
Ok, vous aviez raison, Nick.
L'Institut.
Il faut que je trouve un moyen.
Ça fait plus d'un...
C'est tout à fait ça.
Bien.
C'est ça.
C'est vrai. Il pouvait sûrement entrer.
Ouais.
Il est mort, Nick.
Donc
Il...
Yann.
J'espère que vous ne vous trompez pas.
Voyons.
En fait, je crois que j'ai déjà quelque...
Qu'on se lance dans...
Je n'ai pas besoin de compagnie.
D'accord.
Once they're done talking, we're going to exit the agency and fast travel to Good Neighbor. This begins the longest split in the run and probably the most despised one as well. Before I get into why that is, let me first preface it with what we're going to be doing in a moment in terms of speed tech so that I can rant about this segment in the story uninterrupted. In the memory den, we're going to be talking to Dr. Amari and Nick, where we'll decide that we're going to enter Kellogg's memories that will be implanted inside of Nick's head. This will be followed by a long dialogue where Nick and Amari discuss the implant, and it's an A and B conversation that we're supposed to sit there and watch. Rather than twiddle our thumbs, we're going to set up a punch warp in the corner of the room, run to exit the memory den, and then re-enter, which effectively skips the dialogue. We'll then trigger our punch warp on a man in a lounger to return to the basement quickly. Fun fact, the man we trigger our punch warp on is actually Deacon. Also, when I'm running to exit the memory den, I'll grab some jet that's on a nearby table since it's used in a glitch later on. After the punch warp dialogue skip, we'll then have one more brief dialogue, followed by a prompt to sit in the memory lounger and explore Kellogg's memories. Normally when you sit down there, you have to sit and listen to Dr. Amari talk for about 30 seconds. However, if you shoot Amari to aggro her, then wait for her to shoot you so that Nick becomes aggroed as well, then down her and sit in the chair, it bugs out a script that de-aggroes Nick and Amari and skips her long dialogue. That will put us in Kellogg's memories and will begin the walking segment. Now, I could talk about this split for a long time and discuss all the different ways we've tried to bypass it. Skipping this segment is the pipe dream for every Fallout 4 runner. The reason why is that this segment is super slow and just destroys the pace of the run. We're forced to walk for about 1 minute and 20 seconds straight, followed by standing there for 2 minutes listening to some dialogue. It's just flat out boring. There have been dozens, if not hundreds of different things tried to skip this segment, but we just can't figure it out. One of the most commonly suggested methods to skip it is to just load warp out. After all, that would put us back into the wasteland and able to walk around and do stuff, right? Well, yes and no. We would be free to walk around, but our actions would be limited to just walking. When you enter the memories, your character enters a ghost state where all you can do is walk and interact. No sprinting, no Pip-Boy, no weapons, along with many other restrictions. The only way to remove the ghost state is to access the TV at the end of the memories to exit the sequence and update the quest stage. But let's say that we found another way to remove the ghost state, which is a thing we've actually found. What about then? Would load warping out be beneficial? Well, no, it wouldn't. The reason why is that in order to complete the game, we need to have an NPC named Virgil spawn so that we can talk with him and progress some quests. You may remember that we set up a save outside of his cave to load warp to later on. Virgil doesn't actually spawn at all until you complete the Memory Den quest. And in order to actually complete the Memory Den quest, we need to sit through the entirety of the last area in the memories, interact with the TV, then interact with Dr. Amari afterwards. Only then will Virgil spawn. Now, I know that I just painted a rather grim picture when it comes to potentially skipping this segment, but it's actually not all that bad. Another runner named Brongle actually found a way to skip the walking segment that we're currently doing. That would save 1 minute and 20 seconds off the run if we could do it in a run. There's a bit of a snafu though. The skip to this walking segment requires a little over 1.5 minutes of setup. That means if we were to do the skip in a run, we would effectively be losing 10 seconds rather than saving 1 minute 20. It just seems that whatever we try to do to skip this segment, the game has an answer. With that being said, I currently have a $250 bounty out for anyone who can find a way to skip entering the memories in a way that saves time and is applicable to the any % route. I'd also like to remind everyone that there are currently some other bounties I put out on glitches in this game. I have a video on my YouTube channel about it, and there should be a pop-up in the top right corner now that you can follow if you'd like to watch that video and maybe make some money. People often ask me if any of the bounties I've put out have been claimed. None of them have been claimed yet, but that's not to say that there's a lack of effort. But don't worry, if there's ever any developments on any of the bounties, I'll be sure to make a video about them and let you all know. With all that being said, I'm sure that if you're unfamiliar with the Fallout 4 story, that you're a bit lost right now. To put it shortly, a man named Kellogg took our son and killed our spouse. We then found out that he was hired by an entity known as the Institute to kidnap our son. Our goal now is to enter the Institute, but the issue is that no one knows where it's located or where the entrance is. The purpose of this memory sequence is to act as a reveal that there actually is no entrance to the Institute, and that the Institute utilizes teleportation to come and go. It later turns out that there actually are a couple other hidden entrances, but we aren't able to access those in the speedrun. After we exit the memory den, the story will progress as follows. Virgil will spawn and we can go talk to him. We'll be tasked with finding a Courser chip, which will allow for us to teleport into the Institute. We'll build the teleporter with the railroad after having received teleporter plans from Virgil. And then once we're in the Institute, we'll use the item we pickpocketed off of Sturgis earlier to sequence break the game and cause for Preston to hand over a fusion pulse charge, with which we will blow up the Institute and end the game. When this segment ends, we'll be able to access the TV under the stairs, which will bring us back to the real world. A bloodied Dr. Amari will tell us to move slowly, but clearly she doesn't understand speedruns. We're going to shoot her once to skip her lines and advance a quest stage, followed by load warping out to Virgil's lab.
Je ne sais pas.
When we finally get to meet Virgil, we are going to instantly swoon and wish he was a romanceable NPC. Unfortunately, Bethesda thought that would have been a bad move, but now that I think about it, I'm fine with it because it would surely cause for our character to have a limp. Virgil will let us know that we need to trace a radio signal to a Courser who is located somewhere in Boston. Luckily, we know where the Courser spawns, so we can head straight there. If you don't know what a Courser is, they're pretty much elite robot soldiers that the Institute employ to kill people and retrieve lost property in the wasteland. The location that the Courser spawns at is Green Tech Genetics, which, if you remember, is the location that we punch warped to at the very beginning of the run and discovered before entering the sewer to get the last quest. You may wonder why we didn't just enter there right away, and it's because the door is destroyed and you can't enter the building until you actually begin the quest we just got. There is a door on the roof of the building that we could technically go into, but it's locked from the inside, and even if we somehow find a way to open it, the Courser doesn't spawn until you begin this quest. When we arrive at Green Tech Genetics, our goal is to reach the top level of the building where the Courser is located. There, we're going to negotiate with the Courser to hand over his Courser chip. We'll get to the top level via a combination of item climbing and punch warping.
Le chasseur est au premier. Tirez à vous et envoyez des renforts dans l'entrée au cas où il faut. Juste un revers à la piste. Ceux qui sont pas encore envie, foncez au dernier étage. Retrouve.
Quoi? Crever ici.
Once we've secured the courser chip, we're going to load warp out and fast travel to the railroad HQ. Once we arrive, we'll loot some various scrap to get components for building the teleporter, followed by talking with Desdemona and Tinker Tom to decode the chip. Along the way, I'll rest for 1 hour to skip Desdemona walking around the building, and also fast travel to the HQ again, exit and re-enter to skip some dialogue lines.
Ce qui en vaut la peine. Vous allez finir par vous casser
On a
le
un
dos.
paquet de synthèses.
Desdemona.
J'ai un rapport qui ressemble plus à une BD de...
Ouais, c'était moi.
C'est pour...
J'avais besoin d'une puce de chasseur. Ok, bien.
Le décryptage d'une puce. Heureusement... Ah! Merde! Je suis touché.
Utilisez l'entrée.
Tom,
Non.
vous avez décroché la timbale sur ce coup. Donnez la puce. Voyons ce qui...
Tenez.
À toi de jouer, Tom.
Rather than run back down the stairs to trigger Tom's dialogue and enable us to leave the area, we're going to set up a variation of a cover slide called a dialogue slide to be able to move across the area quickly. After doing so, we'll then load warp out back to Virgil's cave and progress the main quest. This stop by Virgil's lab will be our last and will also be a short one. Because we decoded the courser chip with the railroad, he'll promptly hand over the plans for the teleporter, and we can then peace out and go back to the railroad.
Je me demandais si je vous reverrai un jour.
Je vous avais bien dit que j'y arriverais.
Désolé, après tout, comment...
C'est pas vos oignons.
D'accord, je... Moi non, j'ai... Et voilà, pour vous, toutes les deux, je tiens à...
Je veux des résultats. Pas des...
Oui, bon, mais si vous...
Vous doutez de moi?
Non, mais... Nous... Allez...
Vous venez d'un abri?
Desdemona.
Vous avez besoin...
Upon arrival, we'll briefly speak with Desdemona before talking with Tom. Tom is going to let us know what we need to build in order to get the teleporter running. Luckily, at the beginning of the run, we discovered Sanctuary on our first cover slide. This means that we can just fast travel to there and build the teleporter, rather than going to Vault 111 and running down to Sanctuary to discover it. This saves about 17 seconds. Before I fast travel out though, I drop the military grade circuit board from my inventory. This is because we need the board for the second phase of construction, but during the first, the board will automatically get scrapped for circuitry if it's in our inventory. We're going to be coming back to the HQ briefly, so it's okay to leave the board on the ground for now. After we've built the platform for the teleporter, we have to head back to the HQ to speak with Tom once more. While we're here, we can't forget to grab the circuit board. After talking with Tom again, we can finally finish off building the teleporter at Sanctuary.
Alors?
Bienvenue dans la famille.
Vous avez fini la plateforme? L'heure tourne. J'attends, moi.
Pardon.
Alors? Vous avez fini la plateforme?
Oui, c'est fait. La plateforme est terminée.
Au fait, La technologie, je l'ai dit.
Ah, merci. Tom, je les trouverai.
Once we finish building the teleporter, we have to speak with Desdemona real quick. After this conversation, we'll be prompted to stand on the platform and be teleported into the Institute. Normally, when you step on the platform, there's an incredibly long monologue that Tom would give, talking about firing up the teleporter. However, if you time it right, you can pull up your Pip-Boy and fast travel away after his first couple lines. When you load in at the other location, you'll have skipped the entire monologue and be teleported into the Institute immediately. When we load into the Institute, we're immediately going to load up the Institute relay targeting sequence into the nearby terminal. This will cause for Preston Garvey to teleport in and hand over the aforementioned fusion pulse charge. While he's teleporting in, we're going to set up a punch warp real quick.
La vache. Alors c'est ça l'Institut.
Il se croit supérieur.
After grabbing the charge from Preston, we set up a save by a door to load warp to later on. Then we're going to perform the hardest clip in the entire game. All you have to do is sit down, then stand up, and you're through a wall. This is where that jet we grabbed earlier comes in handy. Jet slightly increases your jump height, which allows for us to make this huge leap to access the advanced systems level. From the advanced systems level, we're going to immediately enter the reactor and trigger our punch warp. This punch warp will bring us right next to the reactor where we can plant the fusion pulse charge. We'll then load warp to the fens and fast travel to the railroad HQ. When we get there, we're going to aggro the railroad very quickly, which will skip a monologue that Desdemona would normally give. We have to be sure to put away our gun immediately though so they forgive us, because if we're too late, then the run is dead. Aggroing the railroad not only skips Dez's speech, but it will also teleport us back to the Institute. If you haven't noticed, we're somehow ending the game with both the railroad and the Minutemen. This isn't supposed to be how the game is completed, but when we got the nuclear option quest in the sewer, we technically started the quest in the middle of it. Because of that, the game didn't know who we were actually siding with, and it defaulted to the Minutemen. So in the game's scripts and coding, it thinks that we're completing the game with the Minutemen because of how the nuclear option quest is set up. However, because we built the teleporter with the railroad, the game gets crossed up and has us finish it with them at the same time. Once we get teleported back into the Institute, we're somehow able to fast travel to the Railroad HQ despite being inside a building that we don't yet have the ability to fast travel from. When we arrive at the HQ for the last time, we're going to speak with Tom, who will allow for us to use a detonator to blow up the Institute. After this last dialogue, we load warp to that Institute door and proceed to finish out the game.
Sur le réacteur et on pourra déclencher.
The run officially ends when my HUD and reticle disappear after blowing up the Institute. Overall, I'm very happy with this run, but it is improvable. I'd like to better my time someday, but I don't think that will be for a while. This is an exhausting run to grind out because you need to get 5 really good runs in separate games in a row. In the meantime, I think I might stick with meme runs in the Fallout games and maybe branch out into doing speedruns of other games. If you've made it this far and have any suggestions for runs I could do, reply to my pinned comment. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy the webcam footage of me taking off the point of view camera and celebrating. This was a Fallout Anthology speedrun. I've been Tomato Anus, and I hope you have an above average day.
I can feel it wash over me. The heat, the force, the radiation, the fear. It's the end of the world all over again. I close my eyes. I see my life before all of this. Before the bombs. Everything can change in an instant, and the future you plan for yourself shifts, whether or not you're ready. At some point, it happens to all of us. This wasn't the world I wanted, but it was the one I found myself in. The Commonwealth. My home. Ripped apart and put back together. I hoped I could find my family, cheat time, make us whole again. The way we were. But now I know. I know I can't go back. I know the world has changed, that the road ahead will be hard. This time, I'm ready. Because I know war.